Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. If you're with us, you know that we're on an hour early this week because we have an extra special guest who needed the extra hour. So we tried to accommodate for what everybody knows, Mr. Mike Wright, the FF Hitman from the Fantasy Footballers. And we brought on the young fantasy mind, Hutchinson Brown, to host once again as Joe has some day job commitments going on right now. This week, we're previewing the Arizona Cardinals, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Minnesota Vikings. Stay tuned.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. Guess who's back? I'm back, Hutchinson Brown here from the Young Fantasy Mind Football Podcast. Joe Zillow is unfortunately out this week, and Josh and Wright invited me to come and host No Punt Intended, and we've got such a special guest who I'm personally a huge fan of, Mike. We got Mike Wright on the show. Mike, I'm a huge fan of the Fantasy Footballers. I'm a huge fan of the Spitballers podcast as well. I can't get enough of your content. All three of you guys. I love you guys. Even before I was in the industry, I listen to you guys all the time. I'm sorry. I just got to get that out a little bit. Tell you how much.
No, please do not apologize. Just continue to continue.
Mike operates on accolades, everybody.
Yeah.
I am. Flattery does fuel me. So please continue. No, what's up, man? It's excellent to meet you. This is awesome to hear. One of the next gen, eventually we will all be replaced. So it's nice to see the face of the person who will eventually ship me to an old person's home and have terrible things to say about me. So what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Good, man. It's an honor to meet you, an honor to be on a show with you. And when Josh and Ryan and Joe told me I'm going to be on a show with you, I lost it. I literally
I'm starting to feel like the Make-A-Wish Foundation with all the guests that we keep cycling through for you.
2 weeks ago, I was on with Matthew Betts.
And 3 weeks before that, Howard Bender.
Before that, Howard Bender. Yeah, it's been crazy, man. So yeah, as Josh said in the intro, we're talking Cardinals, we're talking Chargers, and we're talking Vikings today. So let's just jump in. So we're gonna go to the Cardinals here to start. Mike. If you guys don't know, Mike is an Arizona Cardinals fan as well as the other fantasy footballers.
Last
year's record, that's right. Last year's record 8-8, and they still have the same coach, Cliff Kingsbury. So I'm going to read through these upside, downside, trust fall, and rookie to watch, and then Joe's couple of guys that he threw in here as well, and I'll explain them as I go. So upside, guys that have the upside to finish much higher have breakout kind of potential. For Ryan, it's AJ Green, and Josh, it's Chase Edmonds. Downside, guys that have a big chance to bust based on where their ADP is. Downside for Ryan, Chase Edmonds. For Josh, it's Kyler Murray. Man, I don't like that one at all. I don't think Mike likes that one either.
I have explanations. It's okay.
So trust fall, both Ryan and Josh, DeAndre Hopkins, that's kind of an easy one. And then the rookie to watch, Ryan and Josh both said Rondale Moore. Joe Sleeper's AJ Green. And then Joe's IDP guy, Buda Baker. And Mike's player to watch, pick two players, good or bad. Which two players you got here, Mike?
All right. So, I mean, if we'll go wherever I feel like going for the moment. Let's start with the downside. And I'm with Ryan on this one. My downside player from the Arizona Cardinals would be Chase Edmonds. Unfortunately, in fantasy football, it's not unfortunate. That's the wrong word. But part of the game is in the offseason being excited or during the season looking forward, because we're all dynasty players now, and so you're trying to get the running back who is next up. There's an expiring contract somewhere. I have this player who's going to gain an incredible amount of value, and it seemed like the fantasy community, at least for 2 years or so, has been on this free Chase Edmonds type of a train, and it really grew to that fever pitch this past year, as it was it was very clear that Kenyon Drake was not going to be back, at least not for the money that he was going to want to get, and then someone gave him that money, so he wasn't going to come back for to the Cardinals. And a lot of fantasy players just that was it. Chase Edmonds to the moon. He is the guy. They're not going to do anything about it. And we're waiting because, they'll add somebody. And then they add in free agency James Conner, which there were whispers and rumors of the Cardinals taking somebody in the draft. There was some deep whispers here as well that had a player not been drafted, or
It was Najee Harris, I think.
Yeah, but I can't remember who was left on the board. Whatever. The point is, the Cardinals were lined up to take Najee Harris in the first round. Like, they were links to him, and then after the draft came out, there was some beat reporters saying they were going to take him, but then some other things that happened, and they didn't draft Najee. And the replacement ends up being James Conner, who the fantasy community we don't like James Conner because unfortunately the dude he gets banged up, but he does produce when he's on the field, and somehow the stories about James Conner have transferred into simply just remembering that he gets hurt all the time, which it's true. It's James Conner. His body doesn't really want him to be playing football, but he still is, and he's a skilled football player. You had last year where up until his real first injury, which was in week 12, the guy was racking up top 12 performances. He was racking up top 20 performances. He was good for your fantasy football team.
Yeah, I have a comment on that.
Okay. What's up, Hutch? What do you got?
Yeah, in PPR, RB13 in the first 8 games.
Exactly. But that all started with week 1, where I don't think he got benched. I think he got banged up, and then it was something. It was really weird. Week 1 was very bizarre. So it was
9 yards.
Yeah, everything was like, oh no, I knew I shouldn't have drafted James Conner because he's going to get hurt in week 1, and then after that, RB10, RB8, RB20, RB6. He just was putting up absolute monster numbers. So him coming over to Arizona is a bigger deal, I think, than the Chase Edmonds truthers really want to admit to themselves. You have Chase Edmonds, who in his career in Arizona, which is his 3 years as a pro, has seen 1 carry inside the 5. One. And what is Cliff Kingsbury's favorite play to call when he's at the goal line?
Right up the gut.
Right up the middle, baby.
Right up the middle.
No scheming. No cool block formations. No, we're going right up the middle because that's what men with high T do. And look, Chase Edmonds isn't that dude. James Conner is a sturdy, thick. We all saw the pictures of that dude's back. He's ginormous. Like, he's much, much bigger than Chase Edmonds. So I fear that people are they're with reckless abandon are drafting Chase Edmonds for his upside, not factoring in the downside. I readily admit it could be Chase Edmonds. There is more than a 0% chance that the coaching staff changes their mind and they say, we're going to give the run to Chase. We're going to see if he can be the main guy instead of just the pass catcher, the auxiliary back, the change of pace guy. But that's just not how I see it. That's not how I am projecting it. I think that James Conner is going to come in, and he's going to be Kenyon Drake from last year, which is the grinder, getting all the tough carries, getting the majority of the rushing attempts. Chase Edmonds is an excellent football player, but he's excellent at what he does, and that's how the coaching staff views him. I don't think they view him as more. So he'll be used like that again, and people are going to be really disappointed when it's James Conner who bullies his way to possibly a top 20 finish when he's just picking up really gross fantasy points and he's getting 10,000 carries inside the goal line. I don't know how well it convert, but I think he's going to get opportunities.
Definitely. Wasn't Kenyon Drake like a top 15 running back when he was there?
RB16 in PPR last year. That's one of the things I was going to bring up.
And he's considered disappointing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was an ugly RB16.
It was an ugly season.
But volume-wise, it was also 239 to 97. And if that split goes Connor's way, if he's able to handle that, which is actually probably a bump down in workload from what he would have to do in Pittsburgh, so it might be great for his injury status. it's going to play out so much better for Connor than it is for Edmonds. Edmonds is going to have those days because he's a pass catcher and he's liable to hit a home run that way, but you can't bank on that in fantasy football. And that's why I had to make him my downside. He's running at about a 6-round ADP right now. And I'm just not feeling that for a guy who may not be much of anything. He could be the exact role he was in last year.
Yeah, that was drafted after pick 80. Like he's being drafted.
Well, that's the word. Yeah. Connor's going 2 rounds after, 2 full rounds after.
He's going to get less touches. I mean, Connor.
Yeah, and that was kind of the scenario I was playing with when I was doing like the upside downside, because I do like Connor's upside, especially given his ADP. But because I don't think he's going to have a ton of involvement in the passing game, I think that's really capped. And then you take into account the injury history and his inability to stay healthy. And I don't think it's because he's injury prone. I just think that anytime you go through cancer, your body is just, it doesn't want to. Yeah. It's tough. It's just the way that it is. So I don't see him being able to take on that full type of like Kenyon Drake workload again. And that's why I like Edmonds even at his current price, because I know he's going to be the passing down guy. And I think that he could very well be in store for 25, maybe even 30 to 35 more carries, which even at a lower yards per carry, he's going to do that. And Mike, you brought up Cliff Kingsbury's love for running up the gut. What did they do to kind of fix that issue? They brought in Rodney Hudson. He was a top 10 center. Yeah, he was a top 10 center in terms of run blocking last year, because Mason Cole was 29th among centers last year. God awful. When Kenyon Drake ran up the middle on either the right or the left of the center, he was averaging 3.5 and 3.3 yards per carry. Now, granted, James Conner was running behind a washed out Pouncey and averaged 4 yards a carry.
Exactly.
So you add in somebody who's good at run blocking and Rodney Hudson, I think that benefits James Conner in that short yardage role, absolutely. But look at what Chase Edmonds was able to do in between the center and the guard on each side. He was averaging over 5 yards a carry on those runs. Now, granted, they're not in the red zone, and I don't know how that would change if they were to give him those opportunities. But again, I think we're overlooking that aspect of it, because again, I don't think Connor is going to be a 200 carry back. I know we've seen it once before, but it's literally been once, and he hasn't been able to do it since. So I think you're really looking at maybe 180 carries from him. And then the rest is going to fall on Edmonds. Are they going to get Eno Benjamin involved? How much more can Kyler carry?
No way.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I mean, you had him, 169 carries last year with the three technically missed games, and then he basically missed game 1. I mean, he easily would have cleared the 200 carry mark. And like I said, I'm leaving the room for error that Chase Edmonds is that guy. That's not the way it seems around Arizona, and that's not the way that people talk about him in our local media. Yeah. And even if Connor's not part of the passing game, Kenyon Drake, I think, had 31 targets last year and still ended up as the RB16 in a PPR format, because they're going to score so much and they're going to run such a high volume of plays that it does make up for it a little bit. If Kenyon Drake had just a small amount of more success around the goal line, Kenyon Drake would have been a top 10 guy easily, and people would have been really, really happy with him.
He still had 10 touchdowns last year.
Right.
10 touchdowns.
Yeah.
9 of them inside the 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think another big thing that hurt Drake last year is, even when he was used in the passing game, he was very inefficient. It was like 5 yards a catch, barely.
Yeah, it was weird.
To where it had dipped down because he was at almost 7 the year before, to where Connor tends to be a more efficient guy when he does get the touches. We haven't seen him in a heavy pass catching role, but I think Connor could do more with those 31 targets than Drake did. So,
well, I mean, in the last 3 seasons, Connor has 124 receptions, 152 targets. Like, he's somebody that can catch the football.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the same way that we're talking that Edmonds could take on a couple more carries, you could also be looking at a situation where Edmonds could lose targets because maybe Connor's more efficient in that role than Drake.
And
right?
that's the way, like, when they traded for Kenyon Drake 2 years ago.
Yep.
He was a pass catcher.
That's how they used
That was the bread and butter.
That's why everyone was so excited to draft Kenyon Drake this past year and why he was considered a disappointment.
It's so funny because it reminds me of David Johnson from a few years ago where he finished as the RB8, but it was a disappointment.
Oh,
and
man,
it just seems like, obviously you know the year, but it just seems like we're getting this weird gap where our expectations and reality aren't lining up for these like low tier RB1s, high tier RB2s, where it goes back to something, you guys have talked about a lot and you've added it to the UDK. It's something Bob Lung talks about a lot, is consistency, where it's just not there. The year-end numbers aren't pretty because they're not doing it every week. And that's why you almost have to build a stable of running backs and play those matchups more effectively.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think we're going to move on here. I'm actually very interested to see Ryan put AJ Green as an upside, and Joe's sleeper was also AJ Green. I'm not targeting any receivers outside of this receiving game besides DeAndre Hopkins. I just think AJ Green's limping on the field, and I don't know about Rondale Moore. I didn't really love him in college. I don't really trust that he's even the number 2 target on this offense. They also have a couple deep threats that could compete with Rondale Moore. But I think Rondale Moore could be solid, but I'm not really trusting it. I'm not really trusting anybody outside of this receiving corps besides
one of the lowest ADOTs among this receiver class this year was Rondale Moore. Like he literally works within 3 yards. Yeah. So, and again, that could also be another reason why we see a dip in Chase Edmonds targets, because that's where he's getting targeted. So if they're trying to go for Rondale Moore, that I think hurts Chase Edmonds, or it's one or the other. So.
Yeah, so the question for me on Rondale Moore is, like, you guys are throwing Christian Kirk in the garbage. Like,
I'm not.
I said Christian Kirk could affect him.
I'm saying that AJ Green and Hopkins, that's locked. They're on the outside, and when they're running 3 wide, it's going to be Christian Kirk. Now, if Cliff spreads it open so that you have, with the air raid, you frequently have 2 slot wide receivers, and that would theoretically will be Rondale Moore. And I mean, Andy Isabella is technically still on this team, and now is of a seasoned vet compared to Rondale Moore. As an Arizona Cardinal fan, I was ecstatic when we drafted Rondale Moore. I think that he can be an incredible NFL player. I don't know about his fantasy football upside. Now, what he does well actually lines up well for who can really exploit defenses on with the air raid system, because it is the slot. I mean, look the way that they use Hopkins. It's not a normal outside wide receiver. I think they use him improperly most of the time, where they're just having him run these short outs. Like, you need to expand the route tree here. But if Rondale Moore is just runs a slant every single play, I mean, he's gonna be open, on the vast majority of plays, because you have, as a defense, you have to be concerned about Hopkins, and possibly to an extent you have to be concerned about AJ Green. That remains to be seen for me. But I'm not in on Rondale for redraft. That's one of those, like, if I take the L on Rondale Moore from the draft season, so be it. He's someone that I will watch, and if it looks like the snaps are there and the targets are starting to increase, sure, then I'll attack the waiver wire and I'll go after him, because there is some upside in there with the juice that Rondale Moore brings, which is that, I mean, that's a pitcher full of juice. Like, this guy is absolutely electric and is quite strong. So, but he, of the rookie wide receivers, which in redraft I don't really target rookie wide receivers. I'm in on Jamar this year and Devontae Smith, just because his draft price is so egregiously low. But if Devontae were going where Jamar is, no, thank you. I would not be having a part of that. So it just back to Rondale, like, draft season, I'll let someone else draft him and then cut him in a couple weeks, and then maybe I'll scoop him up. But other than that, I don't really see a strong upside for Rondale this year. Long term, I'm in, but not this year.
Yeah, the Cardinals run, if I'm not mistaken, the most 4 wide receiver sets in the NFL. They have over the last 2 years.
Right.
So they're going to spread it out. They're going to throw the football. And Mike, you brought up with Christian Kirk moving in the slot. He was at 95.1% career routes run in college from the slot. The most he's run in any season as a pro was 40, and I believe that was in 2019. So this is a guy who knows how to operate from the slot, but yet has been running from the outside. But these and when I look at
a bad coach,
well, there's that. But when they bring in someone like AJ Green, sure, it makes you think they're going to run from the slot. But then you look at target separation and how much cushion the DBs are giving these wide receivers. AJ Green was at 82nd among the 90 wide receivers charted via fantasy data in target separation. And now that really correlated with how much cushion that he was getting, which was 81st among those 90. But when you look at guys like John Brown, who are in that lower 10 that are in the middle of the pack over 2 yards per separation, AJ Green just can't separate. Right. Christian Kirk is in the top 25 in terms of target separation. So really at that point, who do you want on the outside? You want somebody that can separate. And that's what Christian Kirk can do, not AJ Green, in my opinion. We've seen how many wide receivers that are over 30 that change teams and just absolutely fall on their face. It's not like AJ Green had a good season last year.
He had a lot of targets.
Like, yeah, he had over 100 targets. But what else was Cincinnati going to do? Of course they were going to throw the football. So, and he caught less than 50% of the passes anyway, and I understand there were garbage cans throwing him the football, but still, it's like, I'm not seeing that. I understand there's Hopkins there, but because he's such a target hog, why on earth do we want any of these other wide receivers? That's what I'm like legitimately struggling to understand, because unless he gets hurt, none of them are even going to be flex worthy 75, 80% of the season.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, I'm not trusting any of these guys because, number one, as you said, he's going to be DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a target hog. And this is a running quarterback. Kyler Murray will probably run for 700-800 yards this year, and that's just less passing volume for the guys to go around. And if you have a target hog in DeAndre Hopkins with a running quarterback in Kyler Murray, there's not going to be enough volume to go around. As you said, there's going to be 4 different receivers on the field. There's just not going to be enough volume to go around for a second target because there's no clear number 2. Like there's none of these 3 we could say, okay.
Yeah, it could be Moore, it could be Kirk, it could be Green, it could be Edmonds. Could be we know it's not the tight end though.
It's
no,
AJ.
It's not a tight end.
It's AJ Green. AJ Green is better than Kirk. He's better than Moore. He's better than the running backs.
You mean was better
on the field?
Green is better.
You're gonna watch Green. He's just gonna limp on the field. He's going to be limping on the field.
And then around. This narrative of no passing volume, they threw the ball 550 times last year. They'll likely throw more this year. Kyler Murray is great. Fitzgerald and Kirk had 70-plus targets last year. Fitzgerald is presumably gone. Green is going to start with a 70-target baseline, and then what he takes from Kirk, I think AJ Green is easily a 100-target player. He's free in drafts, and I think he has top 36 upside with no issue. I want pieces of Kyler Murray the way people want pieces of Patrick Mahomes. I think he's my QB1 this year. I think he is going to have a breakout year, and I think AJ Green is going to be a big part of that.
You're going to be heartbroken like all those people that keep investing in Mecole Hardman.
How am I heartbroken by a 14th round draft pick?
I think I'm not saying there can't be number 2. I think there can be a consistent number 2 option, but I feel it's just not.
It's AJ Green.
None of them.
You're right.
I feel none of.
Break down the targets where you have DeAndre Hopkins seeing, 29% of the wide receiver targets. Then you had Kirk at 14, Larry at 13% of the wide receiver targets. Like and then they spread the ball around so much because there's so many options out there. Maybe it's AJ Green, but he looked pretty toasted to me last year.
Yeah, he looked toasted.
I just feel like there's going to be a bigger difference in offense and a bigger difference at quarterback, and it's going to rejuvenate.
I'm with
AJ
you on
Green.
Kyler.
Yeah.
Kyler's my number 1 guy.
Yeah, Kyler's my number 1 too. I love Kyler this season. But the thing is, I feel like their passing volume also goes down a little bit because that defense, they've signed a lot of different defensive players this offseason, and that defense is actually looking much better with Isaiah Simmons also coming into his second season. I feel that this defense could be much, much better, and they could pass less. All right, Mike. I know you're a little cut on time.
I say Mike has
we got like 3 minutes. What do you guys want to talk about for 3 minutes?
Give us your thoughts on Justin Herbert really quick as we head right into the LA Chargers.
So you got 3 minutes to talk to us about Herbert.
Sure. Herbert was Herbert was definitely a swing and a miss, I think, by all of us, except for the Los Angeles Chargers. I definitely did not see that player from college translating into this gunslinger who just throws one of the nicest looking spirals that we have currently in the NFL. You knew he was surrounded by weapons, but starting behind Taylor and just big whiff by all on Justin Herbert. What will happen? The big concern for Herbert is the change of regime. What does that play calling look like? The OC is not my favorite guy that they decided to bring in over there. We have not equated him with.
He's got good bloodlines, though. Let's be honest.
Yes,
that's what matters in this world.
That's what matters.
I am. It's who you know. So, and he knows a lot of important people that keep getting him jobs. But we have not seen fantasy football success from that scheme. We'll see. I mean, I believe in Justin Herbert, but you could see passing volume go down. You now have you've lost Hunter Henry and replaced him with Jared Cook. Is Jared Cook still have something left? I don't know. I'm not going to say he doesn't, but I'd rather it be Hunter Henry and for Justin Herbert. And Mike Williams, he's everyone's favorite sleeper every single year. I'm in on that. I think he's a very interesting sleeper because of Justin Herbert.
52 right now.
Yeah, and look,
that's a price I'm willing to pay.
And we'll all be disappointed when we draft him and he busts yet again. Except for making a couple like real highlight level catches. But I mean, Herbert should be a top 12 quarterback. I don't see what the Chargers have done and get really excited and like move him up and say, "Oh, this is it. Herbert's going to ascend and he's going to be a top 5 type of guy." No, he's a weekly starter. I'm not going to overdraft him. His ADP is probably fine-ish if you want to grab him there. So it's just a really long-winded way of saying like he's fine. He's not gonna tank your team at the quarterback position, but he's not gonna turn into like Josh Allen last year. That jump is just not in the cards.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree, man.
And with that, awesome. I bid you adieu, fellas. I appreciate you moving up the time. I'm sorry that life happens. Things come up, and I had to jump out of here.
30 minutes with Mike Wright is
A-okay. 30 minutes too long. That's what they say. Hey, Hutch, nice. Man. Hey, I appreciate it, man. Good luck. Enjoy the rest of the show. See you guys.
Mike, have a great offseason, buddy. There we go.
All right, there we go.
I do want to jump in on that. I think my biggest issue with Herbert right now, and I know you want to get into all of it, but I just want to kind of continue.
Oh, yeah, I've got a lot to say about Herbert. Yeah.
It's the ADP that kills me. He's all of a sudden going in the 4th round of drafts, and it's just like, no, that can't happen after one good season. And I mean, there's a ton of talent there, but are we expecting some astronomical leap? I mean, the fantasy industry in general is draft your QBs late. But that's who's drafting right now is the fantasy industry. And somehow he is carrying a 4th round ADP. We could potentially see this get worse when more casual players come in. And that just terrifies me.
I agree. And that's my biggest reason why he's my downside. It's just the price is too high. I love him as a player, and I think he can still succeed. I mean, even looking at what Joe Lombardi did in Detroit, like Stafford was okay. He didn't have the high touchdown percentage and touchdown volume. He only had 22 touchdowns in 2014, but he still threw for over 4,200 yards. So I think you'll see the yardage there. It's just going to be, is Mike Williams going to be healthy? Can he be the big touchdown guy he was a couple of years ago? Is Keenan Allen still going to be Keenan Allen? Because, he really has been regressing, and it's been the volume that's kept him where he's been the last couple of years. Are they going to throw consistently to Austin Eckler out of the backfield? He had 8 receiving touchdowns a couple years ago, but he averages less than half a touchdown per game, which if you're a top 10 running back, top 5 running back, which people seem to think that he has that ceiling, you need a higher touchdown percentage than that, even to go with the 100 targets that he's likely to see.
Yeah, I'm all with you guys here. Herbert is being drafted way too high, and there's a few reasons for me. They were number 1 in pace of play for 2020, right? They have all their new coaches that have come in are pretty defensive minded coaches in their history. That's not good for passing offensive fantasy. As Mike said, these guys coming in don't produce great fantasy offenses. The defense was shattered last year with injuries. The defense was absolutely shattered. This defense on paper, they have some stars on that defense. And I think this defense is going to be much, much better. Austin Eckler's coming back in the run game. He's gonna help out the run game a lot. And there's going to be a lot of dump offs. And Josh, you were asking, what was Austin Eckler getting? So in the last, let me see here, 5 games, I'm pulling it up right here. He had 16 receptions, 1 reception. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. Wrong thing. I was looking at the wrong order. Hold on.
I say if he had 16 receptions,
targets. Right. Ready? 7 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets.
Yep.
Those were his last 5 games. He was pretty heavily targeted in the passing game, and he was pretty involved in the rushing game as well. I definitely think Eckler is top 10 upside. He's a top 10 back in my rankings. But Justin Herbert dumping off that much and now losing a weapon in Hunter Henry and replacing with Jared Cook, it's just not good enough. I feel Herbert at QB6 didn't even finish that high last season. He didn't even finish that high. He finished as QB7 last year.
Josh, you might be muted or something. You're not coming through.
That was my fault. Sorry.
No, yeah.
But yeah, Justin Herbert's being drafted way too high. He's my quarterback 9. There's just so many things that can go wrong in 2021. There's so many things that are bet against him for him to have that massive top 5 breakout. It's just not really there.
So interestingly enough, he's my QB9 as well, but I'm not saying it pessimistically like you are. I actually am not afraid of Justin Herbert at all and would happily take him on any fantasy team. But versus
I'm not afraid of him as like a finishing outside the top 10. I think he's a locked in top 10 guy.
Yeah, you're just painting. I don't see the dark side that other people see. But with what you can get after him, Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill specifically are 2 guys that I know you can get way after. Ryan Tannehill, after I put Julio Jones in, and people are going to call me crazy, Ryan Tannehill is my QB5 right now. I think he is going to have a monster season this year.
I think he's my QB6 or QB7.
So I think he's likely to end up on a lot of my teams this year because he's going so late in drafts. So you just got to pick your sweet spot. If he's typically going in the 12th round and I'm already drafting QBs late, I can take him in the 10th round. But that's 5 rounds after I'd have to take Justin Herbert, and I think he's likely to outperform him relatively easily. And so that's my biggest concern is it's just the price. I love, like I said, Herbert could start on every fantasy team I have this year if he wasn't costing me a 4th or a 5th round pick.
Yeah. So I'm with you there.
All right. So we're going to jump off of Herbert real quick. We might get back to him in a bit. We're going to go these upside downside trust falls and rookie to watch and then Joe's guys. All of you guys agree on the upside downside and trust falls. So I don't know what we're going to talk about today.
We do that sometimes.
Yeah. So last year's record, 7-9, new coach Brandon Staley. Upside player, both Mike Williams. Downside player, both Justin Herbert. Trust fall, both Keenan Allen. Rookie to watch, Larry Rountree. Is that how I'm saying it? Rountree. And Josh's guy is Josh Palmer. Ryan's guy is Larry Rountree. And then
Josh just picks people with his same first name. It's such a stupid way of picking players.
It's okay.
Joe's sleeper is Jared Cook.
Could have picked him by the shirt that he wore, could have made it even more ridiculous.
I like Jared Cook a lot, actually, this season. I can get into that a little bit. And then Joe's IDP guy, Jerry Tillery. And, well, Mike isn't here anymore, so we don't have Mike's player to watch.
Nope, so, you get to pick, Hutch. Run the show, baby.
I get to pick?
Yeah.
Go for it.
You're the host. Mike didn't even ask the guest last week. He just jumped in into Joe didn't even ask the guest. He just jumped in and took control.
Wow, dang. Okay.
I didn't if Joe reads the show sheet, right?
If I were to pick
I know it's way off topic, but I promise you that was exactly what I was thinking. I was like, Joe didn't even look at the show sheet. But anyway, please, Hutch, go.
Okay, so you're putting me a little bit on the spot here, but if I were to pick one guy to watch, it would have to be Jared Cook. He's going really, really late in drafts. Like you're getting him, or like around Gerald Everett price. You're getting him outside the top 20 tight ends. He is like I usually like punting. I usually like punting my tight end position or drafting Travis Kelce. That's pretty much how I roll with tight ends. I've been targeting Jared Cook in a lot of my drafts. Like when I go in my drafts, like I'm like, okay, I like Jared Cook this season because he can just take that Hunter Henry role. And he could just take that Hunter Henry role. And Hunter Henry was a fringe tight end 1 last season, and he was solid with the targets he got. I think Jared Cook could still have it. And if he does, and maybe probably Mike Williams gets hurt again, he's going to see a solid target share on a great offense with a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. And that's just like all you can ask for a tight end that's being drafted outside the top 20. Like that's just, I feel like for me, that's pure gold. But Jared Cook scored a lot of touchdowns throughout his career. He's just been a guy that scores touchdown. I think he's going to help Justin Herbert keep his touchdowns up. But I really like Jared Cook as a sleeper tight end, like a deep sleeper tight end.
That would be the one reason why I can see Cook sneaking into that tight end range, that tight end 1 range. It's literally the touchdowns because I was going through and I'm looking at like Joe Lombardi's history as the OC. And again, it's really only like 16, 12, it's 23 games because he got fired after 7 games in 2015 with the Lions because they started 1-6. But even that 2014 season, they had a rookie in Eric Ebron, and Ebron only had 47 targets that year. Like, not great, but again, it's a rookie tight end. Most of them don't pop in year 1. But then you look at how the Saints utilize the tight end position. They target them in the red zone.
Exactly.
They target Cook. I mean, look at all those years that Jimmy Graham had double-digit touchdowns and 8-9 touchdowns, right?
Yeah,
they had, I believe the Saints had, I think, 11 or 12 touchdowns to tight ends last year. And Jared Cook, I believe, had 6. I don't know if any of you want to fact check me on that. But
9 and 7. So they had 9. Yeah. He had 7 of them.
Okay.
And 6 of those came in the red zone. I just happened to have that up. So,
and even last year, Herbert was looking at the tight end in those same areas, right? So if you sort of mold those two theories together, I wouldn't be shocked if almost 30% of Herbert's touchdowns this year go to the tight end position. How many go to Cook? I don't know. Could be 6, could be 10. Who knows? But then you've got 6'8" Donald Parham back there, who is a freaking monument in the end zone. Just throw it up 7.5 feet, and he'll find a way to come down with it because ain't nobody else jumping that high. So I think there's definitely that sneaky upside, and his price is dirt cheap. But again, it's one of those like he's not going to be a consistent tight end, and we all know that. Like in Ryan streaming game, and I'm fairly certain that Jared Cook's going to be one of your streaming guys all year long.
You're stealing all my good material right now.
Because
I won't say it's all year long, but I want to combine what you two have just said.
Absolutely.
Because what's going to happen is there's one thing that merges what you two said. Cook knows this offense better than any person on the Chargers right now. Right. So for the first 4 games, Justin Herbert is going to love Jared Cook. And you could see 4 touchdowns in those first 4 games. But then you're going to see Parham. You're going to see Trey McKitty start to get more involved in the offense. You're going to see more 2 tight end sets as Mike Williams does get banged up and things along those lines. Mm-hmm. For people who are going to stream, and if you're drafting Jared Cook, you are going to stream. You're not going. The one thing I tell people is, while I encourage you to draft a tight end late, you have to go in understanding that's not your guy. That's your guy for week 1. And I think Cook is going to give you the upside where he might be your guy for the first month because he's going to know that offense. And I'm not saying Keenan Allen's going to be a problem. He's not. Austin Eckler is not going to have any problems. They're going to merge into this offense. But when there's a crunch time, Jared Cook is going to be the one player who is going to for sure be where he's supposed to be. And 15 targets in the red zone last year, Josh, 6 of them for touchdowns. That's where Cook's going to make his bones. We say it every week. If you are streaming your tight end, you want 1 catch for 1 yard and 1 touchdown. That is 7 fantasy points,
your benchmark.
and that is literally going to be a top 15 tight end.
7.1 fantasy points.
7.1 fantasy points. And that's going to be a pathetic top 15 tight end. But remember, if you decided to make this weight and you didn't take Kelsey, 7.1 times 16 weeks is still going to get you 132 points. That's going to play, or 112 points rather. That's going to play well in the pathetic tight end landscape. You're not going to beat the guy with Kelsey, but if you waited, you're hopefully going to beat him with your running backs and your wide receivers. And that's kind of the give and take. But you're also not going to ride a 7-point week every week. You're going to hopefully get guys that hit those 15-point weeks because you're going to follow me in my streams of the weeks, and that's how it's going to work out well for you. But you're absolutely right, Josh. That's exactly what my notes say. If you stream tight end, Cook is a guy worth adding because for the first 4 weeks, he's going to know that offense better than anybody else, and it's going to be great for a month.
Then if if someone has a really bad tight end, like if you're in like your home leagues or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, I really need a good tight end.
Trade him.
Just sell him. Trade him away. Get him off your team and stream tight end for the rest of the thing. You could get, like, if you give him and bundle him with a running back or receiver, you could get an upgrade. Like, you can get a significant upgrade from your running back or receiver, or you could just trade him away for a bench piece or whatever. Like, you could do whatever with him to just get a solid piece, and then you could stream tight end for the rest of the year and have an extra running back or receiver that you like.
Great point.
It sounds good. Yeah.
Before we move on to the Vikings, I want to bring up this one caveat because we did mention a little bit of Austin Eckler. And again, I'm going back to Lombardi's first year as an offensive coordinator. And again, it was 7-8 years ago in Detroit. But because I think you see a lot of similarities in the personnel, right? So in that year in Detroit, he had a gunslinger quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who had 602 pass attempts over 16 games.
And early Stafford is a great comp to Herbert.
Yeah.
So.
He had a dynamite slot receiver in Golden Tate. Keenan Allen plays that role in Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
He has arguably one of the top outside receivers in NFL history in Calvin Johnson.
And Mike Williams.
Not saying Mike Williams is that.
Right. And Mike Williams is a person who exists in the same universe as Calvin Johnson.
But he's built similarly and plays the outside. And really, their average yards per catch, very similar from year to year.
Yeah. Calvin Johnson just caught it
targeted. Well, yeah. He targeted running backs. He targeted running backs 159 times that year.
Yep.
Between Joique Bell, Reggie Bush, and Theo Riddick. Okay. We talk all the time about, Lombardi. Lombardi's even said there's going to be elements of the Saints offense here, that Mike Williams is his X receiver, right? That this offense just finds the X. And we know what that means. Just look at Michael Thomas's numbers. I know Mike Williams is not Michael Thomas. He's not going to be because he's probably not going to play all 16 games. It's just not how he's built because he plays recklessly. But that particular year, Golden Tate had 144 targets, 99 catches, 1,331 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
Calvin Johnson had 128 targets, 71 catches, 1,077 yards, and 8 touchdowns in 13 games.
Yep.
If you're telling me that Mike Williams can't do that, then you have not been watching football the last 5 years, 4 years, really. Because he could do that, especially in this offense. So I think, and again, we're looking at ADP here. His ADP is wide receiver 52, 53 range. Like, he's literally going in the double-digit rounds. And this is a guy that could very easily put up top 20 numbers. Now, again, we're banking on health concerns here. And this is right where Joe would chime in with our would you rather game, which I'm not going to get into.
That's why he's a late round guy.
Exactly. But that's why he's falling there, is because of those health concerns. But when you look at the downward trajectory of Keenan Allen these last 4 years, the targets have been there.
Yeah.
The receptions have been there. The total yards, the yards per reception, that is what's falling. Mm-hmm. And when you combine that with the likely targets to the running back position, which we saw in New Orleans, and now again, going back to when Lombardi was calling plays, you're going to see a lot of targets to running backs, which points the arrow up for Austin Eckler, and to the X, which points the arrow up to Mike Williams. So just remember that on draft day.
Yeah. I mean, Eckler, I think Eckler is going to see tons of targets. So Justin Herbert isn't like a running quarterback. If he sees pressure,
He can run.
Totally cool dumping off. He'll be he can run.
He's surprising.
Yeah, he can run. I mean, just even when you look at him in Oregon, like he had what I think it was that last Rose Bowl game. His 3 touchdowns were literally rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, he can run, but he prefers.
It's not his first option, sure.
Yeah, he prefers to throw, and if he sees pressure, if you see Eckler open in the flat, just sitting right there, he's going to dump it off to him. Eckler's good, and this offensive line is still not great. They've added a few pieces, but it's still not great. It's still going to probably be a bottom half offensive line. So Justin Herbert will be under pressure, and he'll have to throw to Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, I think, sees over like 5-6 catches a game. I think he could see upwards of that. And I think he could be a top 10 back. I have him ranked as a top 10 back. I really do believe him.
I mean, he's currently going as RB9. I don't think that's, outlandish by any means.
No. I have him at 77 receptions right now. I'm just not. I mean, that's only 8 receptions off of 5 per game. So I'm on board with you there. I'm real interested to see, and I know we need to get off the Chargers, but I'm real interested to see if someone is going to fill the Melvin Gordon role or if it's just going to be a disgusting conglomeration of Justin Jackson, Josh Kelly, and this rookie Larry Roundtree, which is why he's someone I want to watch in the preseason, because while Jackson's yards per carry have been high, he hasn't still looked that great. Josh Kelly looked good for like 2 games last year and then completely fell apart. And neither of them were drafted by this regime, and they were both drafted late. Whereas Roundtree is kind of the late guy added by this regime. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, because we have to be clear. If you're projecting Austin Eckler for more than 200 carries, you also haven't been watching, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So. 1 point on Roundtree, 4 years in the SEC at Missouri, 40 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Could very well give Chargers fans some Mike Tolbert style vibes.
Yeah, that was a great comp you made in your article as well that I enjoyed. And that's exactly, I mean, Mike Tolbert was probably the second
vulture, man.
I would say he was probably the second fullback, and I know he wasn't technically a fullback, but he was the second fullback outside of Mike Allstott that you could actually use in fantasy. So,
all right. So we're going to move on here. We're going to move on to the Vikings, a very interesting team for fantasy. Last year's record 7-9, same coach in Mike Zimmer. So upside, Ryan has Adam Thielen. Man, we already have problems. And Josh is Kirk Cousins. And we also already have problems here. We have problems with both. I have problems with both these guys, and we'll explain in a second. Downside guys, Ryan, Irv Smith, Josh, Adam Thielen. Josh, I love that, man. Trust fall, both Dalvin Cook. I mean, that's easy. And then rookie to watch, man, there's no way I'm saying this name right. Kene Nwangwu. Nwangwu. Really? No way. And then Josh, Amir Smith, Marset. Come on. 2 for 2. Let's go. Okay.
Get it.
So we got to talk here about Adam Thielen. I don't understand.
Clearly.
Ryan has an upside.
Ryan,
I need to. For what?
Damn, Ryan. Come on, man. You're probably a kid.
Dang. Okay. I'm going to explain a couple things. Okay. So ready. So look, okay. First things first. This defense coming back. They've re-signed a lot of pieces. People are coming back from injuries. This defense could be a top 5 unit in the NFL next season.
Okay.
This defense looks really good. Even with their terrible defense last season, even though they were in lots of shootouts, they were the 6th heaviest run team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. They want to run the ball so bad. They do not. They are constantly critical of Kirk Cousins. They are constantly wanting to run the ball. They want to give Dalvin Cook all the touches they want him to have. They want to give him all the touches. He's in his prime. He's 25 years old. What?
I said if he's healthy, he'll get the touches. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. He'll see tons of touches. This defense looks better. Dalvin Cook is still there. It's going to be unbelievable. And 2 quick stats about Adam Thielen. Hold on. I got to find him here. Okay. So
it's like he came prepared, but then he didn't.
Okay. So Adam Thielen had 6 games above 4 catches.
Mm-hmm.
6 games above 4 catches. That's it. So in the other 10, 11 games, he had 4, 3, or 2, or 1 catches. That is bad. Adam Thielen had 5 games without a touchdown this year. He scored 14 touchdowns and only had like 900 yards. That's not going to happen. Those touchdowns are going down as well as the passing volume. He had 5 games without a touchdown. All of those games were under 10 points in full PPR, and only one of them was above 7 points.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you right now. Quick question.
The touchdowns, what?
I knew that's where you were going to go, is the touchdowns. The touchdowns. That's what everybody's crying in fantasy football right now. How many do you want to take away from him? Pick a number. How many is he going to lose from the 14?
I see no way that he scores more than 10 touchdowns.
Okay, perfect. So we're taking 4 away, 24 fantasy points. That puts him at 230, and that's wide receiver 16. Do you want to take more away?
No. Okay.
So this is what I'm getting at.
I said there's no way. I think he scores. I would say he scores like 7 to 8. The volume is going down, which also means that he gets less yards.
So everybody's comparing him against last year. Where is he being drafted right now? Do you know?
Wide receiver 19, pick 51.
Wide receiver 19.
That's where
pick 51. So we're talking
last week of fantasy football.
The 5th round. You can get a guy who has proven wide receiver 1 upside, and his downside is wide receiver 2024. If you take away all of his touchdowns. I understand they are a low pass volume team, but they run 2 wide receiver sets. Adam Thielen does not leave the field.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's going to be absolutely fine. Yes, Justin Jefferson is the alpha. My only issue with people who are just destroying Adam Thielen, and please keep doing it because I'll take him in the 5th round of every draft at this point, is you're comparing him against last year. I'm not paying wide receiver 1 prices for him. I'm paying wide receiver 2, and it's likely to get worse prices for him as the casuals start playing. And I always say that like it's a bad thing.
I was going to say, would it get worse though? Because the casual players are going to see 14 touchdowns, and
casual players are going to draft rookie wide receivers.
And they're going to see wide receiver 10 finish last year, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting him this late, and they're going to pick him. It's going to go up. And the problem is, I'm not saying...
I don't think it's going to go up much. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but Ryan, you have Thielen as wide receiver 23. That's why I'm kind of like, why do you have him as an upside here when your rankings have him actually lower than consensus?
Because I see what he could do. The upsize is what he could do, to where I'm projecting him, I believe, at 7 touchdowns. And if he hits,
you have him at 8, the same as Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
And so I just think if he continues to do what he did last year, he's a steal at that value. But the most important thing is, if I'm paying wide receiver 2 prices and get a wide receiver 2, I'm okay with it. If I'm paying it and get a wide receiver 1, I'm ecstatic with it.
Yeah, I know. But the problem is he wasn't seeing the volume. He had 6 games without 4 catches, 5 games without a touchdown. In all those games, he busted. Those are really inconsistent numbers. The volume is not consistently there. The touchdowns are not going to be consistently there. And without a touchdown, he was god-awful. Like, he was just plain out bad. It's changed a little bit. Justin Jefferson is the clear alpha. So
who had 6 games with 4 or fewer catches?
6 games with 4 or wait. He had 6 games of above 4 catches. The rest of the games were 4 catches or lower.
So Justin Jefferson, not counting week 1 and week 2 when he wasn't the full-time starter, had 6 games of his, 14. So he only had 8 with more than 4.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Jefferson is, much like with A.J. Brown, you're banking on the efficiency because he had such a high yards per reception. Will that continue? We don't know.
By 30 targets, though, by right around 30 targets after week 1 and 2.
Yeah, towards the end of the season, sure, Jefferson was becoming the better option. I get that, and look, I'm not on Ryan's side on this. Like I'm down on Thielen, but my bias is just against old people catching footballs. That's all. And
that was the same thing they said about Thielen last year. Even my buddy Matt Betts went on his whole rant about wide receivers over the age of 30 with certain injuries, and the dude scores 14 touchdowns.
Well, again, we're banking on the touchdown aspect of things. They found Jefferson, and with what Jefferson did, I'm not convinced that they're going to they went into last season not knowing what they had with Jefferson. Jefferson then separated himself. And I'll be the first to admit I was not on the Justin Jefferson train. Everybody that has watched this show, Ryan, I was not on that train. I was wrong. Hands down, very, very wrong.
So
but now
now
they have their guy. So
and
at
now
this
defense
point, it
is
becomes,
focused on that
why
guy.
are we going to throw touchdowns to Thielen when Jefferson is our guy? That's the point that I'm getting at. Like in these sort of run heavy schemes, you have guys that they're targeting 25 to 28% of the time. We saw this in a Kubiak system in Houston. This is what they did with DeAndre Hopkins, with Andre Johnson all those years. Clint Kubiak now taking over, his son is going to run roughly the same system. I know he's going to have his same wrinkles, and they're going to do similar things, but he's also going to want to put his own spin on it. And I don't know that that's going to involve Thielen, who, by all accounts, is getting ready to get put out to pasture, because that's just what happens with wide receivers over 30 when you have a young buck at 20-something that's coming in and absolutely dominating.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So he had he had under 900 yards last season, right?
925.
925.
925. Sorry, my bad. He had just over 900 yards, correct? 14 touchdowns. If we see the passing volume go down, that means he will have less yards. Okay? You hear what I'm saying?
I don't know that the passing volume per se is going to go down with a 17th game. That's
okay. Well, on like a per game basis.
Yeah. For me, the upside with Thielen lies in a Dalvin Cook injury. Because if Dalvin Cook gets hurt, they're not running the football with a lead back 400 times.
They're not.
But Dalvin Cook never gets hurt, right?
I'm not saying he doesn't, but I mean, even when they played him for 14 games last year, he's still top 300 rushes. Like,
yeah,
I'm just saying, like, you go into this season expecting Dalvin Cook to be healthy. That's why you're drafting him in the top 5, right? So if that's the case, those touchdowns for Thielen are going to come down, and I think the overall usage and target volume is going to come down a little. I mean, I still have him at a 20% target share, but I only have Cousins at 534 attempts, which I think is actually lower than last year.
Yeah,
so I was I was explaining earlier,
20 attempts lower than last year.
Yeah.
So if
it's 18 more. My apologies.
If this defense is really coming back, right, and this passing volume goes down, that means less yards for Adam Thielen. If the touchdowns go under 10 touchdowns, that under 900 yards, under 10 touchdowns, that is not a top 20 receiver. That is just plain out not a top 20 receiver.
I mean, just looking at last year's, let me pull this up.
I don't exactly know, but that doesn't sound like a top 20.
Juju Smith-Schuster, 831 yards and 9 touchdowns. Wide receiver 16.
Fair, he had 90-some catches because 16? They couldn't run the
Juju
football.
Was not the wide receiver 16.
Robert Woods, 936 yards, 6 touchdowns.
90 catches. You're forgetting the PPR aspect of this.
PPR aspect.
I'm just quoting what Hutch said. Hutch said if you're under 800 or 900 yards and you're under 10 touchdowns, you're not a top 20 wide receiver.
Robert Woods also has 300 rushing yards.
Chase Claypool, 873 and 9, 22, only 62 receptions. Curtis Samuel, 851 and 3, only 77 receptions.
All right, this is a point in your favor.
Everybody is over. All I'm trying to say.
There's just so many things that can go wrong.
You're comparing Adam Thielen to 2020 Adam Thielen. He's not going to do that. I fully get that. But if you're getting him as your wide receiver too, I'm very comfortable with that.
I just think there's so many things that can go wrong. I feel like it's going to come in inconsistent. I feel like it's going to come really inconsistently because I feel like the targets are going to go down. I feel Jefferson. I don't know if he takes a leap forward.
I feel a non-gambling bet coming between Hutch and Ryan.
We're going to have to water bet this. We'll just have to figure it out. I'll get with you after the show. We'll announce it live next week, but I'll figure it out. I have to understand what I'm getting myself into.
I feel it's just going to be coming inconsistent games, and he's going to be kind of touchdown or bust. I feel that.
All right. Since we spent way too much time on Adam Thielen, I want to get some thoughts on Irv Smith because Irv Smith is he's the guy that everybody wants to talk about. Mike Zimmer has already come out and said, I'm not giving him the ball anymore. They keep talking up Tyler Conklin. I mean, even going through and looking at the last couple of years with how they're being used, I actually want to start with Hutch on this one because, Ryan, I kind of know your thoughts here, and Joe has him as a sleeper. Give me some thoughts on Irv Smith here, Hutch, because I obviously myself and Ryan have opinions.
I did like Irv's. I mean, I was okay with Irv Smith as a sleeper, but I don't like Adam Thielen. I don't like the passing volume, so I feel that there's not going to be enough. But he is a tight end, so he could step in the top 12 because the tight end position absolutely sucks. But the problem is, coaches don't usually say that type of stuff. Coaches don't usually come out and say, we're not going to involve you.
Yeah, that was weird.
That coaches don't come out and say that ever. Like, that's not a normal thing. And I was in on Irv Smith as like a sleeper kind of, but now I'm pretty much out. I'm not really touching him. And it's not like he's being drafted. Do you guys know where he's being drafted right now? Because I don't actually have that info on.
It's actually not that bad. It's like 12th round last time I checked. Tight end like 14. Yeah.
Yeah, tight end 14.
Okay.
I mean, the round isn't terrible, but I mean, he's going above Jonnu Smith. He's going above Robert Tonyan. He's going above your guy, Jared Cook. He's going above Anthony Ferkser. He's going above Hayden Hurst. Like, to me, that's way too rich.
Yeah, he's going way too high right now with that.
Well, just to echo what Hutch was saying.
And above Blake Jarwin.
It's a low passing volume offense that is going to run 2 tight end sets. And when he and Conklin were on the field together last year, the targets were split 21-20. He was saved by touchdowns.
Yeah.
2 tight end sets don't usually work out for fantasy football for tight ends,
especially not in low volume. Like the only one
passing offense.
You know what though? I'm about to step on my own tongue because Mark Andrews lives in 2 tight end sets in a low passing volume offense, and it works out.
But he scores touchdowns.
He does. And
they also don't have any wide receivers. So
I was just gonna say he is also their wide receiver 1. So let's be clear about that.
The Vikings have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, so that's kind of. It's not,
right.
And they also have
notice
Dalvin
which
Cook
name you said first.
Notice
what name you said first. You said Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1.
He's going in alphabetical order, Ryan.
No, man, I always say best for last. I always say best for last. That was a good point, though, but I always say best for last.
I know you're good, buddy.
Yeah.
No, that
was really funny, though.
I was also very much on the Irv train. The second Rudolph signed with the Giants.
Yeah, I like
Irv Smith everywhere. I think he had worked his way up to 8th or 9th in my rankings.
Yeah.
Just by studying
he was
usage last year, Irv Smith started to fall. And that was before there was ever this awful quote. All that did was call me to yank 2 touchdowns away from him. So he plummeted in my rankings. Irv Smith will not be on a single one of my fantasy teams. He will likely be a streaming candidate at some point if the matchup is right. But even then, if the matchup is right for him, the matchup is right for Tyler Conklin. So it's still a problem.
Yeah.
Didn't they draft a tight end too? I may be wrong.
I'm
going to their depth chart.
I don't remember drafting them a tight end in the top 3 rounds. But even with this negative comment, this could be a form of motivation. Does any of you think that's a possibility?
I mean, sure, but you can only do so much when the football's not coming your way.
Yeah.
Zach Davidson out of Stanford, I believe.
6'7", 245.
Yeah, 6th round. 245. Yeah, that's not really anything at all. But, this comment
George Kittle was a 5th round pick last night.
This comment could be a sign of motivation, but I wouldn't bet on that, and his price is still too high. If he falls outside the top, if he falls right around 10 and 20, I might scoop him up just because I think he's a pretty talented tight end. I was
going to say it's barely even a question of the price being too high, because I don't disagree with you. Let me be clear. But it's barely a question of the price being too high, in that there's just other guys, and we've talked about them, that I would rather have around that time. Josh, I know you didn't, we had the whole debate with him last year, but Tyler Higbee is going right around that same time. And most people agree with Stafford and the new offense. Higbee is likely a bounce back candidate this year. Adam Troutman is everyone's favorite guy. I know Hutch used him as a disrespectful comparison, but Gerald Everett with Russell Wilson, there's just so many other players I would rather have. Ferkser, and then of course Blake Jarwin.
Because I'm not a huge fan of the Seattle passing offense either, but Gerald Everett is the 3rd option.
Oh, you're
And-
fine. Just the way you said it earlier, I felt like you needed to apologize to Gerald Everett because you're like, he's going with Gerald Everett. Like, I even heard
No, I
this
like Gerald
in your
Everett.
voice.
No,
I
I like.
remember who we were talking
I
about.
love
George
Gerald
took
Everett right now. I love Gerald Everett right now. I think Gerald Everett's a great sleeper because he's a third option on an offense, and for a tight end, I mean that's all you can ask for.
No,
He's a
yeah,
third
absolutely.
option on offense. You can't really ask for much more of a tight end unless you're drafting like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, or George Kittle. Like there's not much else you can ask.
And he's
So-
another one where you should see it early if you're going to see it, to where he's a fine one to build with streaming. Irv is not, because anytime, and Josh, we talked about this a lot last year, anytime it's a good matchup for one guy, it's a good matchup for another guy. And those weeks where everybody loved DeAndre Swift and Adrian Peterson had 3 touchdowns. Well, guess what? It was a good matchup for Adrian Peterson too. So-
Yeah, you gotta keep that in mind. Oh crap, But yeah, Gerald Everett is. I'm gonna go on a little Gerald Everett rant real quick. I'll only take like a minute. But Gerald Everett stepping into his 5th year, right? He's stepping into his 5th season, which is a time where tight ends tend to break out. It's usually like that, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th season. He's going to a new team now, and he's the 3rd option. The coach Pete Carroll has talked about Gerald Everett as a breakout candidate. Like when they were asking about it, like the instant answer was Gerald Everett. He likes what he sees from him in camp and practices. I think Gerald Everett is a great sleeper tight end right now. Sorry, but I went a little off track there. But anything else we want to talk about for the Vikings? Do we want to talk about Justin Jefferson at all? Do we want to talk about Kirk Cousins?
I mean, really, what's the thing with Kirk is I think he's perennially underrated in the sense that he's always throwing the football a ton. And anytime you have these low passing volume offenses, you're looking for efficiency, and that's what he is. He's efficient.
I was just going to say he
with
finds
the touchdown
end zone.
He finds the end zone, exactly. So, and that's where I'm getting at in terms of upside, because he's being drafted at like QB 18, QB 17 range. Sometimes even like falling into the QB 20 range. In most leagues, they shouldn't be drafting a backup quarterback. And I know you're going to find him on Ryan's Stream of the Week on numerous occasions, because that's just what
Probably
he's going to be
one.
able to do. Exactly. So, and that's what I'm getting at, because every year it happens. Quarterbacks get hurt. Running backs get hurt. Yep. You see, like, everybody wants that Konami QB code. They want the cheat code at quarterback. Those are the guys that get hurt and miss time, the running quarterbacks.
Yep.
So, yeah, they're great from a fantasy points per game perspective, but from a yearly fantasy points scored perspective, Cousins sneaks into the top 12. And that's where I see the upside from that standpoint.
I completely agree. The funny thing is he's a weekly QB 10 to QB 13 every damn week, and you can get him for free at the end of your draft. So
yeah, definitely. I think he's a great QB2 in Superflex.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm not 100% confident with him as my QB1 because, as I've said, the passing volume is going down.
I'm not saying I'm going into week 1 with him as my starter.
No, yeah, I'm not.
If you are, just be ready to grab the next guy. That's the thing is.
Yeah.
But you know what, though? You can build a hell of a roster of position players if you do end up with Kirk Cousins as your QB1. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you definitely can.
Yeah, and you don't have to be comfortable with guys that late in the draft, because that's the point of playing the streaming game. And quarterback's another one that if you don't have one of those guys who's an every week hitter, and Cousins is not an every week hitter, Kirk Cousins arguably might have one of the best floors of any quarterback, but his ceiling just isn't typically there unless Justin Jefferson goes off for the week. And so it's interesting because he's a guy who you could get for free, and he's a guy who you're going to want to play week 1, but everyone in fantasy just has that trouble of, well, he was so good in week 1. No, you have to move off of him now because he got that out of his system. And so,
and Ryan, you mentioned something upside. Like, I don't really love drafting Kirk Cousins because I don't feel he has upside.
That's so fair.
He doesn't. He just doesn't. I'd rather have like Daniel Jones or Tua Tagovailoa. They're being drafted right around kind of the same range, and they both have top 8 upside. Daniel Jones could be a top 5 quarterback. Honestly, we could see him take that Josh Allen lead.
I mean, you are so right. If 24 quarterbacks get hurt this year, Daniel Jones is probably a top 5 quarterback.
If 24 that's very fair. I'm not on the Daniel Jones hype train. I'm not on that train. But I do think
I was just about to say, what would make you think that Tua has top 8 upside? Because for me, top 8 upside comes from either 40 touchdowns or 800 rushing yards. And I don't see that at all from Tua.
I just love the weapons he has now with Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. He has Myles Gaskin in the run game. I just love the way this offense is looking. I just love the way this team is looking. I'm not saying that's likely. I'm not saying it's even really possible, but I think that that chance is definitely there. I think Tua could have a massive breakout.
I actually like Tua. I don't like him as much as you, but I have him at 4,200 yards, 28 touchdowns. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I statted the Dolphins out, I think I actually have Tua at I have him at 4,500 yards. And when I saw that, I was like, holy crap.
You remember there were 17 games.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, well, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I have Gesicki, Fuller, and Parker all at 99, 100, and 101 targets. Like, it's going to be an awful offense in terms of like wanting to draft any of these guys for fantasy. But
I don't want to,
but again, for me, it boils down to how many touchdowns is Tua going to throw. I only have him at 25.
Yeah. But the thing is, I like Tua a lot too because the run game is not secure. Myles Gaskin got hurt a lot last year. When he's on the field, Myles Gaskin's great. But when he just gets hurt, he's not built for that workhorse.
I don't even know that he's great. He just gets the volume, and it works out well for him. So, I mean, I love Myles Gaskin, but he was.
I think he's a pretty solid running back. He just can't stay healthy, though. And when he's not there, there's nobody else. They didn't really bring anybody significance. I was 100% positive at 18 that they were going to draft Najee Harris or Travis Etienne or Javonte Williams. I thought they were going to draft somebody. I was 99% sure they were going to get somebody there. And
so you're not sold on Malcolm Brown?
No, I'm not sold on Malcolm Brown. But when the run game is gone, you're going to have to throw. And if Tua steps up to that pressure, which I think he definitely can, he could throw, as Josh has him projected, for over 4,500 yards. And I have him right at QB 12 right now. I think he has he could have a big breakout.
Yeah, for me, it's the touchdowns. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that rushes for 400 yards. I mean, this is a guy that had a very serious hip injury. Like, I don't know. I admittedly have him for over 50 rushing attempts, but it's not for a very high rushing yards per carry.
Yeah, but Josh, didn't you say earlier that Ryan Tannehill is like your QB5?
That's me.
That would be Ryan
Tannehill. Oh no, Ryan. Sorry.
Ryan has Ryan Tannehill as his QB5.
Yeah, it's the same name association. That's all.
Exactly. That's the only reason I like him.
Ryan Tannehill's in a crazy rush. The only reason
he's a former wide receiver, though. He knows how to run.
The only reason people thought he was a good rusher is because he scored way too many touchdowns for as many yards as he got. He only had like 300, 400 yards, but right? 300, 400 yards.
300 or 400 yards is better for a QB than you think it is.
It is.
It was actually Matthew Betts.
400 yards is that benchmark that you want.
Matthew Betts wrote a great article last year, and I don't know if he refreshed it for the Ballers this year, where I think he showed a break at 250. I'm probably butchering his article. Look it up, but it's this really cool article that shows about a QB's ascension through the ranks as they hit certain rushing yards. It was a very well-written article. So,
yeah. Yeah, okay.
He's already trying to look for it. We've got him all flustered.
No, yeah, sorry. It's worth a read. And that's for everybody, but it's definitely worth a read. So where I know 300 yards doesn't sound like much because it's a world where Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray exist, but 300 yards, it's 30 extra fantasy points on top of the touchdowns. So.
Yes.
And that's for people, obviously, that play in leagues with 4 points per passing touchdown.
Yeah.
Like those extra yards, those extra rushing touchdowns, they go a long way.
Yeah, if you get like 300 yards and like 4 rushing touchdowns, that's
an extra 60 points almost.
It's an extra 60-something points. That's great. I don't think Tua hits that, but I still think there's enough with the run game looking iffy. There could be enough passing volume for him to step up in that range. But as Josh said earlier multiple times, it's all going to depend on how many touchdowns he throws. But with all the weapons and their abilities to take it to the house, Will Fuller and why can't I think of his name?
Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker.
With Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller's explosive play ability, they can take it to the house. They can score touchdowns.
I just worry that they are too much the same person in the essence of Tyreek and McCole Hardman, to where I think one of them is going to eat. I just don't know that
one of
both
them
are
is
going to. So
I think the big difference is Waddle plays out of the slot.
Yeah,
Like,
it's going to
even
help
in college.
They can be on the field together.
So. Fuller has always been an outside guy.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see Fuller. And again, one of the co-offensive coordinators in Miami, he was with Fuller in Houston during Fuller's rookie year, so he knows how to use him. So I think, again, we will, go back to the familiarity with the offenses, familiarity with quarterbacks, being Waddle playing with Tua in college, and then Parker being the guy that's been there. He can sort of be that sturdy presence early on. And Fuller can, he's going to miss week 1. Maybe he takes a little bit to get going. But again, that's why I have these guys so close in targets, because I know that Fuller's going to miss games. I don't know how many. It's just, you can pencil that in because that's just always happens.
At least
Parker
one.
seems to miss games. Well, we know he's missing at least one. Yeah. Parker, outside of his breakout 2019, he's missed time every single year.
Indeed.
Gesicki has steadily been ascending. So that's why I think that he'll keep that up. But it's just with that wide receiver 1, it's going to be a toss-up. But I know that Fuller's going to have the much higher yards per catch because that's just who he is. So, but we'll get into the Dolphins.
I say you got a whole 4th team this week, folks. You're welcome.
Yeah,
right? And actually, I'm going to mention in a second. So, guys, that's all for this week. And big thanks to Mike Wright for coming on. It was an honor to meet him. When these guys told me about him, I was mind blown. When these guys told me he was going to be on the show, like, I've watched Mike Wright since I've gotten into fantasy football. I've watched the Fantasy Footballers, and I'm a huge fan of the Spitballers now as well, their comedy podcast. But guys, that's going to be it for the show. Joe returns next week, and we're not going to be live, unfortunately. We changed the start time for our show this week, and now everyone thinks they can move us around. Luckily, NFL Network's Marcus Grant is worth the accommodations, so they're going to pre-record. You can find them at 7 p.m. Eastern on their YouTube page, youtube.com/ClubFantasyFL. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button for them. And they're going to be covering the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Miami Dolphins, who we just kind of talked about. So maybe you guys don't have to talk about them anymore. But, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on, especially, with bringing on Mike Wright. It was super, super fun.
Come on, Hutch. It's what we do, man. We make dreams come true, buddy.
Absolutely, man. So, guys, Club Fantasy, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com. The site is filled with our Look Inside series articles with our team of writers. And with their team of writers, and actually, I'm going to be writing one of those articles coming up in July. Not going to reveal the team yet. The 14.
Can I? I'll say it. Get people a little hyped. Hutch, come on, man.
Yeah, you want me to talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead. You're writing about who now? Who?
So I'm writing about the Seahawks.
There you go.
The Seattle Seahawks. The Look Inside series, just the normal article that they've been doing. I'm just writing for the Seattle Seahawks, and I also have articles coming on my website soon. I've been working on a bunch of articles, working on a bunch of pieces, and theyoungfantasymind.com is that website. You can check my rankings and my podcast over there. The articles tab is up. There's no actual articles posted, so you won't see any. But that should be coming sometime in the next few weeks. I should be started posting articles maybe weekly or every other week or something like that. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Club Fantasy FFL, clubfantasyffl.com. The site is filled with the articles. Go check those out. And the 14 worst teams from 2020 are now up on the site. And my Cardinals will be dropping on Friday one more time. Make sure you follow our awesome guest, Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers on Twitter at FF Hitman. At the FF Ballers is also their company. And be sure to join these guys next week, even though Joe is back and I'll be on the other side of the stream. I'll be watching in. I'll make sure I'm putting in some comments. I'll make sure I'm on the stream kind of. And they'll continue their Look Inside series, the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Dolphins with Marcus Grant, big fan of his work of NFL Network. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense was fantasy. See you all next week. You guys will see these guys next week with Mark Grant. I keep pretending like I'm going to be on the show, but I'm not. It's awesome. It's funny. All right. See you all next week.